these scans that Brian's talking about, this is something that most doctors, and I'm not going to say who, where, what, but if you ask your traditional kind of physician setting, they're going to be like, well, why would you do that? Well, what's wrong with you to make you do that? What are you feeling? What are your symptoms? And you're scratching your head going, well, wait a second, there's nothing wrong, but I want to make sure that I am being proactive to address anything that may be brewing under the surface. Because again, you go back to that pain point where, what was it? 80% of some people over a certain age have an asymptomatic thing going on in their body that could come out in a really ugly form.
Hello, and welcome to the Dream Architect Life with Brian Sweet and Brittany Anderson from Sweet Financial Partners. Brian, how are you?
I am fantastic today. Looking forward to chatting with you.
I'm loving the suit.
Well, thank you. I just got dapper bright. Just for you.
Well, thank you. Brittany, did you get dapper just for me, or was it for Brian? Or you look great.
I get dapper for me, for myself.
Oh. Okay, that's fair. Fair
there
game.
You go.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, you're looking good, and you guys are going to be talking about some good things. Let's introduce that to the audience. What are you guys talking about today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about the theme of the next 3 podcasts is really going to be living a life beyond wealth. Okay. And one of the things that we have noticed, and as if you've listened before, you understand that I've been in the business for 43 years. And one of the things that I have noticed is that there were 4 things that continually kept coming up with clients that we really couldn't solve. And so as part of the Dream Architect Life platform that we're creating, we wanted to create some collaborations to help clients overcome those 4 things that I've continuously seen happen. And the 4 issues are, 1 is purpose. And I kind of look at the Dream Architect Life as maybe 5 pillars, maybe to back up a little bit. And the first pillar is wealth, which is what we do and help clients with. And the second pillar would be purpose. And this is the first thing that we've seen clients have issues with. And especially when people retire from a job or owning a business and they go from something to something, a lot of times people end up kind of lost after the first couple of weeks of, hitting the golf course or, watching Oprah reruns or whatever they decided to do if they had unlimited free time. So one of those pillars is purpose, which we'll be chatting about. The other is health and longevity, which is going to be the topic of this podcast. And health is, maybe the biggest thing other than wealth, or maybe it's even more important than wealth, depending on who you talk to, because if you had all the money in the world, but you didn't have your health, what does that do for you? So we're going to talk a little bit about some things that we're going to bring to our clients and the people that listen to the Dream Architect Life and participate in the website that I think will be almost life-changing. And that'll be the emphasis today. And then the other 2 are legacy, which is helping, get your values down to the next generation, and kind of talking about charitable components, because we have had a lot of clients that really in their hearts, they wanted to be charitably inclined, but they were always fearful that I got to wait until, maybe I pass away to be charitable. And so they didn't get to personally see the benefit that their donations made. And I think with the right planning, there are a lot of things that you can do where not only can you do good, but you can see the good before maybe you go on to the next life. And then the 5th pillar is experiences. And that can mean a lot of things, but a couple of things maybe just to clarify. Life is really all about experiences. If you ever, sitting in a group and talking, what you're talking about is something that happened. It was an experience. You're thinking back on it. You're laughing. You're saying, oh, how much fun that was. And one of the things that we found, and maybe especially with business owners, is that they were maybe so focused on building this business that they never took the time to build an experience, or now that they've got time, since they've never done it, they don't know how to. So we wanted to help create ways of getting people to think, 1, out of the box, but 2, anything in life were possible and you could have any experience possible, what would that look like? And how do you get it accomplished? So those are really the 5 pillars. And today, like I said, we're going to talk a lot on health and longevity. And I don't know, Brittany, if you have any comments to take it from there, but I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think the thing that we've realized over time is that health and wealth in some ways become a little bit synonymous. And really, when people get to a point where the chase maybe is no longer money, it's not the financial component, according to what it is they want to accomplish, what their goals are, what, ambitions they have for their future, they get to a point where they feel good about it financially. So then all of a sudden they start kind of redefining, well, what does a wealthy life look like to me? And that's the foundation of the pillars that Brian just talked about, and why we're choosing health and longevity as the first topic. Because, if you get to a point and you've worked so hard after all these years, and, you've focused on your plan, you've stayed true, you've been disciplined, all of those great things. And then you get to this point in life where you can enjoy that hard work, and you fall sick, you fall ill, you're bedridden, you're in the hospital, you're, battling things that you really weren't planning for. Our goal is to help bring proactive, advances, proactive individuals in the health space that can potentially help prevent some of that. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Well, I mean, this is timely for, I'm sure, a lot of people in the audience, but specifically, I'll just share that's very timely for me. I had an uncle who, within the last month, fell down. They were actually, my aunt and uncle were working at a campground, kind of being campground hosts and doing some things I always loved outside. Fell down when he was working, and nobody found him for a while, and he hit his head, and so he has actually paralysis on one side of his body permanently now. And so now he's going to be in a wheelchair, and everything has now changed. He is still active, he can talk, he can do all those things, but the problem is that where they were living, they can't possibly make that accessible for him in the future. So now they have to find a new place to live as well. So it's not just, am I going to be healthy enough, in 5 years or in 10 years? Just like you said, Brittany, something can happen very quickly that changes your circumstances. And if you're not prepared, what does that longevity look like at that point? Which is kind of a dose of reality for myself and my family, because we're thinking, how are they going to navigate this?
Yeah, it's if you just talk to enough people, everybody's got a story like that. And
Absolutely.
in most cases, it's something fairly recent. And there's an interesting statistic that we heard, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this resource to our listeners, is that 80% of people 40 and older have some asymptomatic issues going on in their body that they don't know about. And so what we're trying to do is make people aware of all of these amazing, life-changing medical advances that are going on. For the listeners, there's a great book out by Tony Robbins called Life Force that talks about this, but it's amazing the things that are out there that can catch these things before they happen. So, for example, and these will be people that we have collaborations with, but I was lucky enough to participate in a full body and brain scan. I was able to meet with a longevity doctor who, his thesis is age 50 at age 100. And that's kind of realistic to be able to do that. And what we've been finding is that, and it's nothing against local doctors, but a lot of the local doctors, have been practicing for a long time and they know what they know. But with these medical advances, there's a lot more to the world today than, here's what's wrong with me, take this prescription, and or my knee hurts, well, let's do surgery to fix it, or hip replacement. There's all sorts of things like stem cell things that are happening where it's non-invasive, or there's peptides which are natural things that you can take that can possibly solve the problem without having to have a major surgery or taking medications. Like myself personally, I don't like taking medications. And if there's anything possible that I could do to avoid that, I want to be aware of it. So it's just been mind-boggling to see these things. And it was really interesting having gone through that. Fortunately, knock on wood, everything came back well. But they mentioned a couple of things that if you weren't aware of it, could lead to something. And so then they gave me some things to do in advance so it doesn't become a problem. And I think most people, if you had the ability to know something bad was going to happen in the future today, and you could do something about it, I think most people would want to know what it is and deal with it today so that potentially it never comes up, or if it does come up, it's a lot less serious, and or it happens a lot later in life just because you were able to do things to delay it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about, these longevity measures and these preventative visits, I guess you could say, here's the issue. This is not being talked about in your day-to-day conversations. Again, when we're thinking about people who have gotten to a point in their life where the money is no longer the issue, that's no longer the chase. Now they're looking for access to things that maybe your everyday individual isn't being aware of. So, these scans that Brian's talking about, this is something that most doctors, and I'm not going to say who, where, what, but if you ask your traditional kind of physician setting, they're going to be like, well, why would you do that? Well, what's wrong with you to make you do that? What are you feeling? What are your symptoms? And you're scratching your head going, well, wait a second, there's nothing wrong, but I want to make sure that I am being proactive to address anything that may be brewing under the surface. Because again, you go back to that pain point where, what was it? 80% of some people over a certain age have an asymptomatic thing going on in their body that could come out in a really ugly form. So, I think about Eric, like with your uncle, well, a doctor is not going to be able to prevent him from taking a spill and taking a fall. What could happen on the other end is if there is that paralysis or that damage, and I'm making nothing promissory here because we are not doctors, but being connected with people who are doing things like, stem cell injections and alternative methods to your traditional, like Brian talked about, like with the medication, or, you're put them under surgery right away and that's going to fix it. There's so many different alternatives to explore that people just are not talking about enough. And that's why we feel it's really our due diligence to bring this to the surface.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why, we want to do this is, one, we kept seeing these problems come up, but we've actually had client experiences like that. There's one client specifically, and this turns out to be a good story, but, first of all, they, had done a great job saving, they sold their business, and they had this dream list, and we created a dream board for them. And when they would travel and do the things that were on their dream list, they'd take pictures of some place they were at, send it to us holding up their dream board. And, it's such a great story. And fortunately, they were able to knock most of those off when, unfortunately, the wife ended up with a pretty serious medical issue. And for a while, we weren't quite sure what the outcome would be. Well, fortunately, it turned out well, but the other thing, they're just not able to do as much as they used to. And fortunately, they were, proactive in doing things that were important to them. And so my thought comes to, well, if they would have known about these preventative body, brain scans, all of these things that we're now aware of, and I had been able to tell them that, and they actually did that, would that have helped or prevented or caught that early for them? So that wouldn't even ever been an issue. And so the interesting thing, and one of the resources we're going to bring to our clients, is we've been very fortunate with some groups we belong to to get introduced to some of the leading people in the industry. So, for example, the body and brain scan people, they've done over 65,000 body scans and brain scans. And, just recently we were chatting with them, and in 1 week they caught 14 aortic valve issues that apparently there's a 5% chance of survival if you don't treat it early. and they were actually literally able to save, 14 lives. And the really interesting thing about this group, because there are a lot of people that probably do body and brain scans, but they've created a network that if they find something in the body and the brain scan, they've got the doctor connections for every one of those where they can get you into a doctor or a specialist for that within 2 days.
Wow.
Now, just think about that. Is if you found you had something wrong, well, I got to get on your schedule. It'll be, next Tuesday, the 23rd of February in 2023 or whatever, so some period of time. And so, just knowing the resources and knowing it's available, but then having the outside access if something came out was great. And so we're trying to do that in all sorts of areas. So we have, one of the leading Alzheimer's doctors, and, my mom's dealing with that today. So that one kind of hits my heart. And so we'll be giving resources for people that are dealing with those issues that you won't see locally. The guy that invented the nose strip that, for sleeping, has created a new device that will help you get more deep sleep. Dan Cohen is his name. I know him personally, and we're going to have him as a resource, and other sleep doctors. And, like I said, one of the top longevity doctors is also going to be in our platform and the resources that they deliver available to our clients. So it's really exciting because although, this isn't all put together yet, it's going to be available. And, pretty soon we'll be able to have some of these neat stories that, we caught this or we prevented this, and, this was the result. And that part will be just, really exciting when it actually occurs.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. I as you're talking, the only thing I could think of with the body and brain scan, and this is just where my brain goes. My son's a mechanic. And if you've ever seen a scanning tool, right, that you plug into the car and then it'll throw codes is what they'll say, but it gives you codes of things that are possibly wrong, are going wrong, or are wrong, right? And then you can figure those things out one at a time. This sounds like a much more advanced version of that. I don't know. It would be very interesting to do that. So in your experience, Brian, when you did this, what was it like? Was it like an MRI machine? I mean, how did they accomplish this full body and brain scan? I'm really curious.
It's two separate tests, if you will. And the body scan is relatively quick. It takes 4 or 5 minutes for the actual test. The other is more like an MRI. It's like 40, 50 minutes. So it, the loud noises and all of those things. But the interesting thing is then when you're done with that, then you get to sit down with the very skilled doctor, and they have like literally hundreds of images, and then they can show you and enlarge, here's what we're seeing, and actually show it to you of here's what the potential problem is. Here's what we're seeing. For example, there's another gentleman that went with me, and he's 56, and they did a brain scan, and and I'm like Brittany said, I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't know the terms, but there's a matter that grows around the brain that grows bigger as you get older. And he's 56, but that matter around his brain was that of an 80-year-old. He had no idea. And so he was able to then, find out, well, what do I need to do so that doesn't keep expanding, too quickly? Because relatively young age at 56, me being 64, I think that's really young. But it was so eye-opening to just know that with literally, if you just did it one after the other, within an hour, all the tests could be done. And literally within another hour, all the results could be read to you, and you understand exactly what's happening. So I'm not talking about, taking 18 days of your life to figure out what the problem is. It's really a relatively short period of time. But the key is after that relatively short period of time, then they have the experts that help you decide what is it that you can do. Now, you may elect not to do anything. That would be your choice. But if you know, and then what the resources are that can help you, wouldn't that be a great thing? And so there was a couple little minor things that popped up, and I took advantage of it and said, let me know what I need to do. And then I took the next steps, and, those things are being done today, but they're relatively minor. And it's just, you kind of sleep better at night knowing, hey, I've checked everything.
Yeah. And so here's the not the conclusion to that story, as it were, but with my uncle. So here's the thing, is that because he was by himself, the doctors don't know if he had a stroke and fell down, or if he tripped and fell down, hit his head, and then that caused a possible stroke or the paralysis. So just thinking about what you're talking about, if he had had access to this full body and brain scan and all that before that incident happened, they could have seen something in there that could have led to the stroke, right?
100%.
That's amazing, right? Because again, we don't know what we don't know. I can tell you right now, my elbow hurts for some reason, just out of the blue. It's been hurting for a month, and I'm stubborn. I haven't gone to the doctor yet, but there could be something going on besides just whatever they call tennis elbow. I don't play tennis, so I have no idea. But right, I mean, but there's something wrong there, and I'm just like, I'll deal with it one day. But shoot, if I could get the whole body scanned at one time and just get all the answers right then, and then I can pick and choose what I want to do now, later, whenever. But it's all about planning, right? I mean, that's what you guys focus on. And if you can plan out how to make your life better by being more healthy, to have more experiences, man, I mean, that's beautiful. I love that. I've never heard of this before. So I'm just absolutely fascinated. I kind of geek out on this stuff, so I apologize, but yeah, that's fun.
I think what we're trying to do, and from being in the industry a long time, this platform that we're creating actually doesn't exist. So we're actually probably creating something brand new from what I'm hearing, which is also exciting in and of itself. But there's a quote that's probably my favorite quote that ties in so well to this. It's, "He who has his health has 1,000 wishes or 1,000 dreams. He who doesn't has one."
Wow.
So
I've never heard that, and that's powerful.
Yeah, that, and when you really think about it, if you had all the money in the world and you didn't have your health, what do you wish? I wish my money could buy my health.
Yeah, absolutely. Brittany, you've been quiet for a little while. I apologize. I took the mic. What have you got for us? What thoughts do we want to close this podcast out with?
No, it's just, it's fun and it's exciting. You can tell Mr. Sweet is incredibly amped up about this topic and is really excited about what this can potentially do for people. And Eric, I just think you hit the nail on the head earlier. You're talking about, the elbow, and, I'll get to it someday. And that's the thing, is that we all have our someday list. We all have those things that we put on our radar and say, I'll get to it when I get to it. I got too much going on. But honestly, I mean, health it's everything, because without it, life is nothing. So I just think that this is really exciting. It's so innovative, and we are feeling really proud to bring it to everybody's attention.
So I got to ask, how do people find out about this? Besides the podcast, obviously, how can they find out more information?
Yes. So we are going to be building a totally separate website. So full disclosure, it is separate from the Sweet Financial Partners website. They'll be able to find it at dreamarchitect.com. That's where they can find more information on kind of what we're cooking, what we've got going coming up. And we'll give some more information in the next couple episodes too.
All right. Fantastic. Brian and Brittany, thank you so much for your time today and all the great information and this groundbreaking new opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
You bet. And our last thank you, of course, goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Dream Architect Live podcast with Brian Sweet and Brittany Anderson. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Brian and Brittany come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And we humbly ask that you share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this does actually help others find the show. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Sweet Financial Partners, this is Eric Johnson reminding you that possibility comes to those who create it. And we'll see you next time.